Yes, folks, welcome to Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. And yes, we are actually starting on time for once. We normally say we're going to be on at 10. That turns into 10:30. But you know what? It's an important week. We're approaching the semifinals of the fantasy football playoffs for a lot of people. I'm Jorge. This is Justin. This is JT. We are really looking forward to today's episode because we know this, you win this week, you're in the championship next week. So without further ado, let's just get right to it. So JT, you remember how we started at 10:30 last week, and then after we went off the air, we're like, man, okay, and it's only, and I look at the clock here and it's like midnight, and I'm like, damn. And I had last week off on Thursday, and I thought to myself, well, I'm still going to be productive tomorrow. Whatever. I'll get up like I would be if I was going to work. I didn't wake up till like 11. I was like, okay, this is the longest.
Never works that way, dude. I always think that. I was like, oh, I could get up. I'll get some things done before. No, sleeping in.
Exactly.
Hey man, when you're a new parent, you gotta get that sleep anytime you can. It is precious, precious, precious.
It is a hot commodity. You are not wrong.
It is.
How you doing, man? How's your week been? How are things going? We got the holidays coming up, which we'll talk about in a little bit in terms of Shoot the Gap. But what's new with you, man?
Doing all right. It's funny thing. We played this game called Fantasy Football all year to try to make the playoffs, and then either miss the playoffs or you make it. But if you make it and you lose in the first round, you just totally get rolled. You're like, what did I just do all that work for? But it's all right. I just got absolutely worked in some leagues last week where I just nothing's worse. Like I always say this watching the game. My girlfriend's like, sometimes you seem really mad when your team loses, other times you're not as bad. I'm like, I never like to lose, but if we just get outplayed and the other team's better and you play a good game but you lose, I can take it. What I can't take is when you lose on bad calls, horrible plays, your team just plays like absolute dog shit. Like that is just drives me insane. So I don't have a problem losing in fantasy when the other team just goes off and has a big week.
Right.
Nothing you can do about that. Nothing you can do about them just having a monster week. What drives me nuts is when I put up my lowest scores of the year in the playoffs. Now, you put up scores like way lower than anything you've put up all season long. And I did that in multiple leagues that I literally was the lowest scoring team of the week, and I put up one of the lowest scores of the whole year. It was brutal. Usually my teams wait to the semis to completely crap the bed, but this year it was round one. So hopefully I got it out of my system, and the teams that all were on bye are actually going to win in the semis. I'm going to make the championship game. That's crossing my fingers, hoping that's the way it works. And in my 3 longest standing IDP leagues, I'm in the semis in 2 of the 3. So looking for 2 big wins this week in my IDP leagues.
Speaking of IDP leagues, so I don't know if you remember, we were talking about this in the preseason, how we're fans of defensive backs. You can win a championship on the back of defensive backs. So in IDP league Dynasty, where it's just IDP only, I'm the defending champion. I got the 2 seed rolling into my matchup this week. Defensive backs: Julian Love, Buda Baker, Cameron Bynum, Julian Blackman. I got Cam Taylor Britt here. A lot of these guys are going to be helping me go hopefully to the promised land.
Maybe put up points. You got a good group right there. Nice.
It's not bad. One league though, my home league, where my close friends and my wife and her sister and so on and so forth, and family, longtime family friends, are in. I got the number 1 seed, so I got the bye, and so I'll be facing my cousin Corey, who's over in Hawaii, him and I, we played twice this year in the regular season, and he and I split the difference, and his team is good. Like we're both projected to be like within like 0.25 points of each other. So it's going to be a knockdown drag out. But my wife made it past the first round, and now she's taking on one of my close friends, Jeremy, and she's projected to blow him out of the water. So it could very well be yet another year facing my wife in the fantasy football championship if I was lucky enough to advance. Every time I have faced my wife in the fantasy football playoffs, like you were just alluding to, my team decides this is the week we're going to have the lowest total points scored for the season. And then not only does she beat me, she goes on to win the league. And again, a year, just rubs it on my face. Rightfully so. I have it, you deserve it at that point. But I gotta be honest with you, I'm kind of scared shitless right now. I kind of don't want that to happen. But
God's kind of like they're slapping you in the face a bit, but they're like, we're doing it good. You know what I mean? It's like little kid when you give him just that little slap on the booty. Like you don't like spank them, but you just give them a little tapper. It's like, I'm doing this for you, bud. Helping you out, man. Trying to keep the marriage good. Like let the old lady in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to make you feel better about it.
I know. What I should do is I should, she always like sets her lineup at a certain time on Sundays, like 5 minutes before or 10 minutes before the games start. And so I should just be paying attention to when she's on her phone, ready to set a lineup. And I'll take the newborn over there and have him projectile spit all over her. So she puts down her phone and she can't finish setting her lineup. And it's like, oh, too late. You couldn't set your lineup because you were covered with baby spit. I know that's like a really graphic and really extreme way to go about things, but I have to be able to find some way to use my son against her. And somehow I feel like
the thing is, you want the win, but you don't want to cheapen the win. You know what I mean? You don't want to win on her not getting a lineup in, because then you'll never hear the end of it anyway. It's like, you shouldn't have beat me. That's garbage. You almost got to beat her legit or it doesn't count.
Well, I also don't want to hear when her entire family is over here for Christmas and is like, so Melissa beat you again, huh? And it's like, God damn it.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Then the family starts writing you. That's even the worst.
Yeah, yay. Happy holidays.
Yeah, no joke. Joke. It's like the Steelers are playing the Chiefs on Christmas. So either I'm going to have the greatest Christmas ever this year, or no one's going to talk to me Christmas night. I'm just be like, leave me alone. I'm going to be pissed. If the Steelers lose, they've been worked by the Chiefs for a decade now. So yeah, so it's either one. I'm like, right now I'm excited. I'm like, yes, I get to watch the Steelers on Christmas. I'm like, hell yeah.
Right.
We'll see how long that before that happiness wears off as I'm screaming at the TV on Christmas and the kids are like, oh, Dad's yelling again. Here we go. They know it's me yelling at the TV, so it's all right.
Will Power, Will, you've been all over Fantasy and Frames programming, I feel like all week long. So thank you very much for your support. No matter what, Jorge, you're going to lose in the fantasy playoffs if you play your wife in the final. So it's science. It's not. I shouldn't even try, Will. I shouldn't even just set a lineup. It is what it is.
But hey, even if you win, Jorge, you lose.
I lose.
That's what Will's saying. Even if you actually get the win, you're going to pay for it on the other end. You're going to lose.
Oh boy, there is really Captain Kirk was wrong. There is no such thing as a no-win scenario. I want to get to this question first, though, because Rachel or Tootsie Pop 6. Everybody on Fantasy Twitter knows Rachel, who's an amazing person who you can check out a lot of her content now over at Football Guys. She posted this like an hour ago, and so she's been kindly waiting up late to hear our response to this question. So I figured that we just knock this out of the way now. She says, hello, which two would you start out of Kenneth Murray, Josh Metellus, Cam Taylor Britt, Maurice Liafu, or Ugo Amadi? So Amadi and Britt, corners are always tricky, right? But if you're going to play a corner, you want to play ones that get you the slot snaps. You look at the safeties. You want the safeties to be close to the line of scrimmage to help out and run support and be de facto linebackers. So that's where you have Josh Metellus come in handy. You have Liafu, who's the rookie linebacker, probably going to be filling in for DeMarion Overshawn. and Kenneth Murray, who's starting linebacker for the Tennessee Titans. Right off the bat, if I'm swinging for the fences, if I'm going for upside here, I want Metellus and Cam Taylor Britt, because DTR is going to be Dorian Thompson Robinson is not going to be he's in a tough matchup versus Cincinnati this week, and I could see him putting up some lame duck passes when he's under pressure from a certain DL play I have for you this episode. But Metellus last week, I think he led the team in tackles. He was basically the box snap leader there amongst all the safeties. I just feel like he has a higher floor than Kenneth Murray or Liafu. On top of that, look who's coming to town. It is the Seattle Seahawks. They are trying to run the ball, but the Vikings are very good at stopping the run. So great spot for Metellus, and I'm on board Cam Taylor Britt this week. What about you?
Yeah, to me, Metellus is the absolute yes start. I think you got to get Metellus in there. I love Metellus this week. The question for me, I really love what Ugo's been doing. I've been playing him in a ton of leagues. He's been so good lately. Now, the issue has been the Packers have not thrown the ball a lot.
Right.
So that's the question with him, is he's playing that box kind of slot box. He probably plays the slot corner is really what he's playing. My old nickel back, as I like to call it, the nickel back. He is the Udo. He's been great lately. The question is, like, how many tackles is he going to get? Is he going to be in the run game and making tackles in the run game? Now, because interception wise, if you're a high interception team, Cam Taylor Britt's probably, like you said, the home run hitter with that game against Cleveland. I could see that game being wild. I could see the defenses, both defenses have not been great, especially the Bengals, but they've been getting a lot of tackles. I mean, all their DBs were up there last week in stats. So they're all been good. So I can see going for him if you're looking for the home run hit. Ugo, though, he had 7 tackles and a sack with a pass breakup last week, 8 tackles, 2 pass breakups the week before, 9 tackles and a pass breakup the week before that, 8 tackles the week before that, 9 tackles and a pass breakup the week before that. So if you add that all the way up, you're looking at the last 5 games for him. He has the bare minimum 7 tackles as his worst outing. He's at 8 or more in every other game in the last 5. Also added a sack in there and quite a few pass breakups. So I do like Ugo. I'm probably going Metellus, Ugo Amadi. Those are probably my picks. But like you said, if you're going for like the home run hitter, trying to get like a big score, Taylor Britt is probably your guy, getting the chance that he'll have the best chance at an interception. I do think Amadi's got a chance to make some tackles. And if they throw the ball to Jaden Reed, if he can get a decent amount of targets in the slot, that means Amadi is going to have a good game, either making tackles, knocking down passes, being in the mix there. But my one worry, like I said, is the Packers have not thrown the ball a ton. So that might limit his opportunities at an interception there. But I do like his tackle numbers. His tackle numbers have been great.
Hopefully that helps you out, Rachel. And of course, tune into the Fantasy and Frames kickoff show on Sunday mornings, like I know you do. Thank you very much for the question. Will's over here saying he was looking up Josh Metellus' stats on Sleeper, and it shows zeros everywhere except for tackles. Yeah, I noticed that also. Going over to Fantasy Pros, they have a little bit more information, but he really is kind of like tackle or bust for the most part. Let me just pull up one more resource, and I will confirm whether or not that is the case or not. But I mean, either way, okay, if it's just tackles that he's getting, then good. That's what I want.
Yeah, he has mostly strong tackle numbers. He was one of my plays 2 weeks ago when he got a pick and a pass breakup against Atlanta. Also had 7 tackles in that game. So he's been more of that. But part of the big reason to play Josh Metellus, especially in tackle heavy leagues, is he ends up being kind of the pseudo LB2 for them a lot of times. So there's a lot of times they spread it out, and he kind of is playing like that second linebacker spot coming up from the safety. So he doesn't have a lot of other stuff as far as like sacks, Fumble recoveries, he does have that one interception this year. I think he does have one fumble recovery. Actually, he's got 2 picks this year. I lied. He had one early in the season against San Francisco. But he has been a tackle-heavy guy. 10 tackles against Chicago, 7 the week before that, 10 the week before that, another 7 in that game. So, I mean, he's been really a guy that's going to get you 7, 8 tackles. So that's why I said if you're looking at floor in a tackle-heavy league, I like Metellus and Amadi. I just think those 2 guys are going to have the best chance to get a lot of tackles. But like I said, if you're looking for a home run here, like you said, a guy like you need a pick, maybe a pick 6, going for it all, Cam Taylor-Britt is probably the play there. I don't like Murray at all. That Titans linebacker situation is just an absolute disaster. I don't want anything to do with it. And Liafu's, he's played better of late. I will be honest, he's been better than I thought. He was one of the guys I pre-draft this year. I was not a fan of him, man. He had some of the worst metrics coming out. He just a terrible missed tackle rate in college. He just wasn't great. He's played better for Dallas than I thought he would, to be honest with you, but I still don't know if I trust him.
Right. I mean, we saw last week, week 14, he had 2 total tackles and 1.5 sacks. It was a fluke sack there. This past week, he had 5 tackles for, again, we're talking like low double-digit tackle numbers, which for linebackers for IDP, and of course, I'm talking about fantasy pro scoring for linebackers for IDP. You want a lot higher than just your 11s and 10s, especially for the fantasy playoffs. JT, how about we get into some news and notes?
Yeah, before we do that, Will said brain fart. He looked in the wrong league. He said it was a not IDP league. He couldn't figure out why he had zeros everywhere. It happens to the best of us, Will. It's all right. No problem. I was like, it shouldn't have zeros for Metellus. So that I've done the same thing before. So, hey, let's get some news and notes. Why not?
I like how if you're a superstar in the NFL, you don't even have to wait for the beat reporters to break news. You can just put out an Instagram post and just tell the world yeah, I'm done for the year, just FYI, before anybody else.
Yeah.
Because that's what Max Crosby did. He on Instagram was like, yep, needing ankle surgery. I'm done for the year. And then you listen to all the pregame shows and you're just like, have they announced he's done for the year? And the Raiders have not announced that he was done for the year at the time. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, I am done for the year.
This cracked me up because right before he did it, Sincere McCormick did it as well. He's like, oh, hope to be back next year, guys, blah, blah. And this is before they announced anything with him. They knew he went out of the game with an ankle injury. But he announced oh, I'm hoping to be back next year. Can't wait to see you, Raiders Nation. People are like, did he quit? Did he get cut? What happened? And he was pre-announcing that he was out for the season. And I think it's hilarious because then Max Crosby did the same thing. And the funny part was people were questioning him. It's when people somebody reports something and they put it on X and someone's like, source. They're like, source is me. I have a broken ankle. I'm not playing the rest of the year. But it's hilarious that the players are coming out and saying it and people don't believe them until the team announces it, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's obviously this is a blow. This is a blow for fantasy managers who had Max Crosby. And it comes down to what your strategy was. Draft season. Did you punt defensive end? Probably not. Or defensive lineman? Probably not. You probably wanted to get one of the elite ones. And you punted some other position, probably defensive back, and then focus on your linebacker second. But the problem with that is if you go high on defensive linemen and then you start a run, well, then your DL2s and DL3s are kind of not as high, not as productive. And so, which case your DL2 or DL3 in this situation, you're probably looking for upside here, and you may see some people on your waiver wire that you may want to consider placing in Max Crosby's spot here. But this is not good. Either way, this is not good. But you hope he has a healthy recovery, fast recovery, and he comes back healthy next year. And we just pour one out for you there, Max.
Yeah, here's the thing. I talked about this earlier on the Dynasty evaluation on Fantasy and Frames earlier today with John McGlynn. This is the issue when you get late in the season, when you get bad teams, you get guys that get injuries. If they were in the hunt, these guys would probably fight through and try to play. But when you get these teams that are out of it, and you get guys that are already kind of banged up, especially if they're younger players or superstars, this is when you start getting nervous about them not playing and them sitting them. Now, usually, we've talked about this before. It's not like teams in the NFL just totally tank because obviously these coaches and these players want jobs next year again. They're not just going to tank for a better draft pick. That doesn't help them at all. So it's not the tanking, but I think what you get is the issue with like a Max Crosby, a guy that's probably going to need off-season surgery. They look at it right now like we're out of it. We're in dead last place right now. Is there a reason to hold off the surgery till the end of the year when we can't make the playoffs? We can't do anything but hurt our draft position. Is it better off IRing him now, get the surgery early so you can rehab early? This is the thing this is the thing as a fantasy football manager, you got to really keep an eye out for here at the end of the year, because you're going to see a lot of these guys on teams that are out of it, that if they're nicked up and there's a chance they have to have off-season surgery, that they might just IR them and have them do it early now. So got to be very, very careful here in the last 2 weeks, last 2 to 3 weeks of the season. It's always something that bites people, not expecting it when these guys end up, out of nowhere. They're like, oh, IR. It's just like Trevor Lawrence. Right. We're just on IDP, but Trevor Lawrence was the same thing. He got the concussion. They already knew he's probably going to have surgery on some point on that AC joint. Well, that was just like the good excuse. Oh, well, if he misses the next game because of the concussion, what is that? How many games that leave him left? Let's have the surgery now. Now we can get him, in rehab earlier. We can make sure he doesn't miss any camp. So those are the types of things. It's like some of these teams, they just need that much of an excuse, to shut a guy down and move forward. So definitely on these bad teams, I'd be much more worried about guys that are questionable to play than guys on teams that are in it. And that's where I saw the question from Will coming up here. These teams that are in it, these guys are going to push these guys to play because it makes a big difference compared to, he's asking, hey, is Sean Elliott going to play for the Steelers? I'm sorry. I think he plays unless he absolutely can't go. I think they get him in there. But this is a situation where if the Steelers weren't in it, I don't think they push him with a hamstring. But I think I'd be really shocked if Elliott and George Pickens don't play. I mean, this is a monster game. They win this game. They win the division. They lock it up with a win. Also, you're playing your hated rival in Baltimore, trying to go 2-0 on them on the season. If there's any chance they can go, I think those guys are playing.
Well, let me ask you a question then. If they lock up the division, do you rush to bring TJ Watt back if he doesn't play this week?
Yep. See, there's another one. I think if they lock up the division, if I'm the Steelers, I slow roll him back to the playoffs because we've just seen over the years. I don't know. Outside of some of the top end QBs, I don't know if there's a player more important to his team than TJ Watt is. I mean, you just look at the record for the Steelers. When they have him, great record. When he does not play, they're terrible. They have a terrible record without him. So if TJ can go this week, I think he'll try to give it a go. Maybe they let him play 50% of the time. I have to be honest. I was holding my breath when he was limping off. I'm like, please tell me this isn't like an Achilles or something like insane. Like he tore some ligaments in his ankle. So the fact that they were like, hey, it's, twisted ankle, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, it's like ankle sprain. I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. Cause I was like, man, if that's an Achilles, like after all this work the Steelers have done this season is toast. And granted, they have Highsmith, and I love Herbig, but like I was like, man, no TJ Watt. It's just a difference maker for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Watt just basically live on Jalen Hurts' back the entire game until he was no longer able to go. But you just dropped a name here that is very. It gets a reaction out of me, and that's Nick Herbig. And that is if Watt misses. Am I crazy to like immediately be like, okay, Herbig off waivers if he's there, he's going to be lining up in that DL spot, or is that a little bit too much too soon for?
If TJ doesn't play full, or even if he's limited, which I could see him playing and just them giving him like every other possession, to try to like watch him a little bit. If he doesn't go, I mean, I think Herbig's a great play. I mean, we've seen it whenever he gets full time playing time, whether it's replacing Highsmith or replacing TJ, the guy just he's a wrecker, man. He gets in there and makes things happen. He doesn't typically get you a bunch of tackles, but man, he's a guy that at any time can get you a strip sack. So I really, really like him. So he's definitely a guy I'm going to keep an eye out on. I have, to be honest with you, in most of the leagues I have TJ, I have Herbig too. And I actually have Highsmith in quite a few of those leagues. I was like, I'm taking them all and just, I'm, seeing it, if somebody's out, then I'm playing the other guy. But I'm playing TJ. If I'm going to pay attention to what they're kind of saying about him, I doubt they're going to be real honest and say he doesn't play at all, or if he does have like kind of a pitch count, I'd be shocked they ever even mention it. You know what I mean? I just don't think the Steelers are going to give the Ravens that. So I do like Herbig, but if there's no TJ definitely out, that he would be a very, very iffy play. But if TJ definitely doesn't play, I like Herbig.
Nice. One piece of good news that was great to see this past week was Drake Greenlaw returned to the football field, although he left a little bit, into the game. I want to say like he only played like a half or something before he, something was bothering him.
They said that he was having tightness. So some of the injuries he was kind of coming back from, they said he was he wasn't hurt, but they were saying like he was developing some tightness and they were wanting to make sure they like didn't put him out again. So that was the basis, I think, for that, him coming out in the second half.
I mean, you go back to the Super Bowl a year ago, which is crazy to think that we're on the cusp of eventually getting to the Super Bowl in a month or two. That, you see him on the sideline ready to run on the field to start the second half, and then he falls down and tore his Achilles, and you're just like, you just feel bad for the guy. And so, as a Drake Greenlaw fan, it was great to see him, in pads, ready to go on the field. I'm glad they took him off the field. I'm glad that they were able to just, they cared more about his well-being than, even though it was an important game against the Rams. But Mr. Devonta Campbell decided at some point, he made a decision. He said, that's
He's
one
like,
nice.
Peace out.
Yeah, he
didn't want to play.
Yeah, he Antonio Browned it minus taking off the jersey and was like, I'm out. And I was surprised that they didn't cut him, but JT, why don't you tell the people what they did, meaning the San Francisco 49ers, what they did to him that is even better than cutting him?
Yeah, so the obviously the feeling was he did that, they were going to cut him. Then I saw some reports that they were going to suspend him instead of cut him, and people are like, why are they suspending him instead of just cutting him? They're like, they didn't want him to be able to go to another team and just play right away. They were like pretty pissed about it. And they're like, no, we're going to suspend him and not pay him. So that's what they're doing. So I would suspect he's going to be gone at the end of the year, but instead of cutting him right away, they're just like, no, we're going to suspend you without pay. So now he's stuck at home with no pay. He can't go to another team. So they kind of, they kind of got one over on him on there. I think he thought maybe they would cut him and he could go somewhere else and play. And they're like, nah, we're just going to suspend you and not pay you. So I think the Niners won that battle in the end. But yeah, you don't want to piss off your employers too much if you can help it, man. You can ask for the trade. We've actually seen people ask for trades and get trades, or ask for their release and get released on a fairly decent basis lately. It's not like teams are just totally holding over guys, but yeah, if you do that to your team, you just refuse to go into the game because you're mad you didn't start the game. Like, yeah, it's a bad sign.
Speaking of bad side, we got War Clouds here in the YouTube chat. He's got a question. He needs us to answer this question. He's in a bad way. He needs to figure out, he needs which linebacker he wants to start this week, because I'm guessing with a name like War Clouds, you're in quite a few fantasy championships, or at least semifinals, and we got you covered. So he's asking Robert Splain, Dan Henley, Frankie Luvu, Jimmy Sherwood or Foya Luakun need 3.3 points bonus for 10 combined tackles. Okay. So who is more than likely to get you the double-digit tackles here? I personally,
It's a good group to choose from. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, good for you, because I'm like really thinking hard about this. I'm like, man, this is a good group. I gotta think out who I like best.
My immediate thought went to Henley, but Sherwood is a very close 1B to that 1A. So if I had to rank these, I would go Henley, Sherwood, Splain, Luvu, Aluakon. Because Aluakon is not the Aluakon we've known for years in Jacksonville.
Yeah, so he needs 3. He's picking 3 of those 5.
Oh, I thought it was a 3.3.
No, it is. It's 3. He gets 3-point bonus for 10 combined tackles, but he needs 3 out of the 5.
Okay.
Here's where my head's at. Finish up with your thought, and then I'll jump in with who I like here.
So Henley, Sherwood, Splain would be where I'm going with this.
You know what? I think I'm the same. I was a little surprised. I want to see if you were going to say Luvu, because I know you're a Commanders guy. But I was looking at it. I think Spillane, you got to play. Henley's been right around 8, 9, 10 tackles the last couple of weeks. Sherwood had 2 down weeks where only had 4 tackles, but then he's had 3 out of the last 5. He's had monster weeks where he's had like 15 or 17 tackles. So I think you got to go with Sherwood for sure. I was trying to see Frankie, we've talked about him. I feel like we've talked about him a ton this year. He's been a guy that's just way up and down. I mean, he just absolutely buried you last week in the playoffs. If you played him, 0 tackles, 1 pass breakup. He only had 3 tackles the week before, but the 3 games before that, he had 8, 10, and 7 with a couple sacks. Right. So it's a little bit more of a toughie there, but if you need sacks for the bonus, Luvu is your best bet to get a sack. But I think if you're looking just tackle floor, I think I'm with you. I like Spillane, Henley, and Sherwood.
Here we go. And it was very cool to see Troy Dye and Dan Henley both have productive matchups there for fantasy managers last week. So thank you very much, Workclass, for the question. If you have more, feel free to reach out and drop them in the chat. And as well as everybody else watching Shoot the Gap, whether you're on X or you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube, just give us a follow at Fantasy and Frames. Don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com right now. Check out our waiver wire articles. Maybe there are still players that you need to fill roster holes with. Check out those waiver wire articles and IDP waiver wire articles. Our plays and fades for week 16, both for offense and for IDP, will be coming out soon, tomorrow and Friday. So pay attention to that. We got our rankings coming up at fantasyandframes.com. We got a lot of stuff coming your way. So we're here for you. So we really appreciate all you all tuning in and all the support you're providing. But JT, I feel like there's not a lot of news outside of that for defensive purposes. So do you think we should just go to some money in Mirage?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so it's very simple, folks. We've been doing this all year long. So basically, we're gonna give you a statement, and we're gonna decide: is it a money statement, meaning it's true, or is it a mirage in that it's slow your roll? So, and folks, for you in the chats wherever you're watching, please let us know what you think, because your opinion obviously matters very much to us. So the first point. Micah McFadden, Demario Davis, Akeem Gaither-Davis, and Christian Roseboom, all 4 of those linebackers, including this past week in week 15, from week 15, 16, and 17, will be top 24 linebackers in most IDP leagues. We like to talk about IDP scoring from Fantasy Pros, but at this point, I don't care, because the tackle numbers are so high. You can very much find in most leagues, wherever you're at, whether it's a tackle heavy league or a balanced league, these guys are going to put up tackle numbers and could go on a hot streak. Do you think that's a money or a mirage statement that those linebackers, McFadden, Davis, Gaither Davis, and Roseboom, can finish as top 24 linebackers in fantasy?
Man, I was thinking hard about that one. Oh, I think it's a mirage. I think it's half and half, to be honest with you. I think McFadden and Roseboom finished top 24. I don't know if Davis and Gaither Davis do. I think the two Davises, Demario Davis just had a monster game last week. So he was huge, but this has been one of his least consistent seasons this year. I mean, he just had the 14 tackles last week against Washington, had 8 the week before that, but had 3 the week before that, had 13 the week before that, but 10 of them were assists. You never know about some of those assisted tackles. Oh, man. I think Roseboom and McFadden do. I think Davis and Gaither Davis don't.
We got Will in the chat saying money. Let us know why. Why do you think that, Will? So my thought here is I know Roseboom is going to give me double-digit sack total, double-digit tackles. I know with Okereke out for the Giants, McFadden, who's been filling in tremendously, is going to get me double-digit tackles. Akeem Gaither Davis is going to give me close to double-digit tackles, more assisted tackles than solo. But I think the volume is there for him to get me double-digit tackles. Demario Davis. Now, you brought up a very good point, who I may or may not be talking about later on in the show. He may not have the tackle for every week, but he has the big play upside. Whether, we talk about the 14 total tackle performance last week. Well, then he had like a sack, right? And then there was like 8 tackles the week before, but then he had an interception. So he's always, coming with tackles and big plays. And so especially this week against Green Bay, I am going to say that's going to increase his upside. I'm going to say money. I'm very curious as to hear what everybody else thinks. Let's see here. He says he agrees with JT. 50% of the guys he mentions, McFadden will be huge. So 50 cents on that dollar bill. For those of you who are listening, go ahead.
I would lean maybe slightly more for you, like the money side, because I do think Demario Davis is kind of playing nice right now. I think he's got a nice finish for you here. But like I said, I definitely like 2 of those guys. All 4 is it's a little iffy, but we obviously, that's why we do these questions. If they were just slam dunks, we wouldn't do these questions. So good job, Jorge. You got me thinking hard on that one.
And we have like people like on the regular watching this show on our YouTube channel, and they actually post comments. And I forgot to mention, JT, that one of the individuals who watched this show, I want to say they watched it on like Friday or Saturday. They wished you a speedy recovery because you weren't feeling well last week. So they definitely reached out, and
I appreciate it. I'm still a little nasally. I just can't kick whatever I got. It's just not going away at this point. But I don't feel terrible. I think I sound worse than I feel. So I at least don't feel bad. I was not feeling great a week ago. I just am having the residuals now, just a little bit of runny nose and the raspy throat. But other than that, I appreciate it. Thanks. Trying to get better here in the winter months in Illinois. Anybody knows the Midwest weather, it's like one day we get it's 55 and everybody's outside in a t-shirt. And then the next day it's, 20 degrees and freezing rain. And you're like, it doesn't do well for the staying healthy. That's for sure.
I hear that. But so thank you very much for showing your concern for JT. And for those who are watching this not live, drop a note in the comment. Let us know what you think. Was that a money or mirage take? If you're listening to this in podcast form, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate and review. Let us know what you think. All right. So we're deadlocked. Will's in the chat. He's leaning mirage. So by default, we'll just say based off of takes on this, we'll go it's a mirage. All right. Next one. Nick Benito is on a tear this season. Money or mirage? Benito is a top 10 dynasty edge rusher going into next season. This is a great question. I love this because we haven't talked a lot of IDP from a dynasty perspective this year, which we will be doing into the new year. But that's neither here nor there. Whew. Man, top 10. Like
I could have said top 20, but I thought that made it too easy. I was like top 10. I was just pulling up some of my rankings and looking at it because I'm like, who does he beat out to get in the top 10?
That's what I'm writing down.
That's the question. Now. Yeah, you got to look at it because that's the question. Because you got to remember, you got to think about these edge rushers. Who's out there? Is he? I mean, he's had a hell of a season. Does he have enough to sneak into a top 10, especially dynasty purposes? Now that they've made some trades, now that Baron Browning's gone, now that it looks like Benito's going to be a full timer. He's still young, going into his third year. Next year will be his third year, right? Yeah. If I'm correct on that. I'm going to look that up real quick. I'm pretty sure this is his second year. So, but like he's a young guy. He's had a hell of a year. Now, matching this year could be somewhat difficult, but the Broncos have proven they're a pretty good team. They've got a nice base. The defense is looking pretty good, and they finally cleared some way for him to play all the time, where he was like, he was pretty much a rotational guy there for a while. The reason I bring this up is I'm like, season's coming to a close, and I'm going to have to redo my IDP rankings in the off seasons. What do you think? Does he sneak in there? Or is he still a little on the outside for you?
All right. So right off the top of my head, edge rushers, I have one in no particular order. This is not a ranking. This is just no particular order that I've written down. Parsons, 1, Hendrickson, Garrett, Crosby, Watt, Hutchinson, because I think Hutchinson will come back from that injury strong. Hunter, 7. I think you're right. I think he does.
He's right there now. Right do I think overall, like in a redraft, is he top 10? I think that's kind of close. But in Dynasty, I just looked it up. It is his third year. So it's his third year out of Oklahoma. This is year 3. So he's going to be going into year 4 next year. He's 25 years old. He won't turn 26 until next season. So you're looking at guy coming right into his prime, year 4 in the league, going to be 26. Really kind of find his way. He's got 11.5 sacks already this year. He had 8 last year in 15 games. So we already knew he could get home some and just get a more playing time. I tell you what, I'm going to be really, really thinking hard about this in the offseason. Like, does he break my top 10 edge rushers?
Man. So I'm still going. So Parsons, Hendrickson, Garrett, Crosby, Watt, Hunter, Bosa. I think Jared Verse for Dynasty can creep up in there. Maybe he's just as.
See, I think Verse is right there with him. That's what I'm saying. There's a couple of young guys that are right on that cusp, and then you got a couple of the older guys that are just like, you're like, ooh, does he bump ahead of them in Dynasty because he's just a little bit younger? We're getting some of these stud guys are getting close to those late 20s, early 30s. As a guy who's going to be 25 years old, he's basically the same age as Micah Parsons. Right same age as Verse. Rousseau, he's a couple years, he's about a year or 2 younger than Josh Hines Allen. It just, I just was thinking about this one. I was like, that's going to be interesting to me. I'm going to have to really dig deep and look at some stats and do some things, but he's right there for me, I think, which I couldn't believe. There's no way I would have said that going into the season, like not even close. I mean, he was in my top 150 IDP players, but I wasn't like even close to my top 10.
Right. Man, that is. Basically his age, I think more than anything, you take away all the metrics of performance. I just feel like, what do we think about for Dynasty? We think about years down the road and age. And I think just based off of his age, he has to be considered. You look at Fantasy Pro scoring just in redraft this year in points per game, he's number 2 overall.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's crazy. Will jumped in here and says if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, I say money. So it's still not to be top 10 if he wins Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I don't know if he'll win it because it's like he's kind of new on the scene, but he's going to be close. I mean, if Denver makes the playoffs with a year he's had,
yeah,
he could be in that mix. I don't know if he's got enough name recognition to win Defensive Player of the Year. We know how that kind of works in the NFL. But originally Will said Mirage when I brought this one up. Then I did go after Dynasty, and he's like, "Oh, Dynasty's a little different than Redraft." He's like, "Oh, he's like that's real close." He's like, he started leaning money when we talked about the Dynasty question. That's what I think. I don't think he's top 10 in a Redraft. Even though I like him a lot, but man, in Dynasty, I think he's going to be tough to acquire. If you don't have him, if you're trying to move him or trade for him, I think he's going to creep up there. People forget it. He wasn't a first round pick, but he was a second round pick. He was a high second out of Oklahoma. So, and this is year 3. He's going to have an 8-year and a over double-digit sack in his 3rd year. It's a pretty. He has over 20 sacks in his first 3 years in the league. And he hasn't played full time the whole time. That's not too bad. It's not too shabby.
Yeah. I think I gotta say money. I think it's money.
I think he's there. I was thinking about it today, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna have a hard time not having him in my top 10. I really, at least edge rusher wise, now if you want to throw in linebacker or some other people that maybe moves them down a bit, but if you're just talking about your just straight edge rushers, your guys that can play D end or D line in a league. Yeah, I think he's going to be right there in top 10.
I agree with you. All right, let's get to Warclouds. Has another question here. Thanks a lot, Warclouds. We appreciate it. Jeffrey Simmons for the Titans or Leonard Williams for DL this week. So I was just looking at, believe it or not, pass blocking metrics here and success rates and pressures and sacks given up here for the Colts who are taking on the Titans and the Vikings who are taking, the
Seahawks who are taking on the Vikings.
Yeah. I think I'm going with Jeffrey Simmons right here. Let me pull it up here.
The Colts O-line is beat up right now. They're real beat up. They're playing a couple rookies, a couple guys they just signed a few weeks ago. Yeah. They are the Colts had one of the best offensive lines earlier in the year. They are on the struggle bus right now. It's not great. If you would have asked me this a couple weeks ago, I would say Leonard Williams for sure. Yeah. I'm not sure Jeffrey Simmons might not be the play this week.
So from weeks 12,
go ahead.
No. So I was going to say from weeks 12 through 15, the offensive lineman guards for the Indianapolis Colts have given up a total of 17 combined pressures and 3 sacks and 3 quarterback hits. Whereas the Vikings, they've allowed 18 pressures, but only 1 sack. So I think I'm going Jeffrey Simmons in this situation.
Yeah, hard to sit Leonard Williams with the way he's played lately. I mean, he's been an absolute beast. So I can see that question. It's a toughie. Here's the one thing is, if I got to play those guys at D tackle, I'm feeling pretty good about it because like those are pretty nice, guys to have in the mix. I mean, Leonard had the 2 monster games in a row. I mean, absolute monster games where he had the pick 6, fumble recovery. He had 4.5 sacks. He hasn't had a sack in each of the last games, but he does have a nice tackle floor. He does have 7 tackles each of the last 2 weeks, even though he didn't get a sack. But I'm with you a little bit on that.
So
I think Simmons might be in play.
So it's funny that you mentioned tackle floor because when it comes to edge rushers, that's like the discriminating factor I use to kind of like put together some rankings here. Is that it's, you don't want the guys who are dependent on the guys that are just sack or bust. You want to have some elevated floor tackle floor, especially solo tackles. So this season, using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, Jeffrey Simmons, the DL 15, Leonard Williams, the DL 16. Go figure. Simmons averaging 10.2, Leonard Williams averaging 10. So here's where things get kind of interesting. Jeffrey Simmons, 34 solos to 24 assists with 4 sacks. Okay. So a little bit more higher tackle floor, but big plays have been lacking. Leonard Williams, on the other hand, 25 solo, 24 assists. So a lower floor versus the high floor for Simmons, but more big plays with 7 sacks. So what are you hoping for? Are you hoping for the big play to bail out Leonard Williams compared to Jeffrey Simmons? Or are you hoping that the tackle floor will compensate for the low sack production? Again, it's pick one or the other. I don't think either of them are bad plays. It's just when I look at who they're going up against, this Colts interior offensive line has been
struggling. Yeah, that I feel like they're pretty even guys all around. Like you just said, right next to each other statistically. I like Simmons because of the matchup.
Yeah, that's where I think I'm going to go. I think you're right. And speaking of matchups, let's give the people what they want. They want some plays and fades for IDP for Week 16. Let's give it to them. So I got to say, we killed it last week with our plays and fades. I thought we just brought it. It was great. I was looking at all the scores and all the box snaps and everything, and I was just like, man, it's almost like we know some shit here, JT.
I feel like I only missed on one guy. And the one guy I missed on, we're going to talk about because he's in my fades list this week because he screwed me last week. So, but I felt like we were pretty good everywhere else. I had one swing and a miss, but I felt like we were solid up and down the board last week.
And if you want to see more plays and fades, of course, you always check out JT's IDP plays and fades articles that come out each and every week over at fantasyandframes.com. Let's get into some plays and fades at the defensive line position. Now, I'm going to say the name. Let me go over my play, then we'll get to your play, then I'll get to my fade, and you'll get to your fade. How about that?
Sounds good.
I'm going to say the name Trey Hendrickson, defensive lineman, Cincinnati Bengals, and you're going to tell me the average person who plays IDP or the person who's proficient at playing IDP is going to be like, oh, yeah, Trey Hendrickson. No kidding. The guy is he's a fantastic edge rusher. He gets a lot of sacks, blah, 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 blah. No kidding. That's an easy one. Well, let's face it. The waiver, the bye weeks are over, right? And let's say you have, and you're playing in a shallow league, and you have a Nick Benito or Watt who's questionable with the injury this week. You have a Parsons, or you have any combination of like decent linebacking options or more than decent linebacking options. Even let's say elite options. Which one is going to give you the most bang for your buck? And I think it's going to be Trey Hendrickson this week. The Browns have given up the most sacks in the NFL over the past 4 weeks. The offensive tackles for the Cleveland Browns have allowed 5 total sacks on 34 pressures. Look, Cleveland is just really bad. And I don't care if it's not Jameis Winston anymore. I don't care if it's DTR and his ability to, make plays with his legs. It's not going to matter. Trey Hendrickson, and this is going to take advantage of these offensive linemen. And this is going to be a multi-sack performance from him this week, which is why I am so high on him compared to other elite edge rushers, because just the matchup here and just how good he's been all season long. Expect a really high performance from Trey Hendrickson this week.
Well, and Jorge, we're past the bye weeks, right? So bye weeks, we're like, we're picking and choosing. We're trying to grab whoever we can play. Right. Some guys are a guarantee. Now that we don't have the bye weeks, and now that the pressure's on the playoffs, everybody's available. It is about picking the most high-end pick. Like, don't worry about where you drafted a guy. Don't worry about what you got invested in him. Who's the guy that's going to score you and possibly win your league? And I think you're right on here with Hendrickson. He's the guy. he could absolutely hands down win you a league this week. And if I'm in a couple IDP leagues. I most of mine are full IDP, but I'm in a couple IDP where we're only playing like one D lineman, one linebacker, one safety, and like one or two flexes. So I have leagues like this where I'm picking between, am I playing Micah Parsons? Am I playing Russo? Am I playing Hendrickson? Who am I? I got to pick a guy. And I think you're right. I think Hendrickson is just, I mean, the upside for him, the chance of him getting 2 tackles, getting a tackle and a strip sack, it could be huge. I mean, he could get you a 20, 30 point week this week and win you a league. He really could. So I love that call.
And let's not forget like the benefits of a defensive lineman getting a sack. On sleeper, there's like compounding points, and so like if you get a sack, that means you got a tackle, which means you got a quarterback hit, which means you got a on top of that, a sack. So, 2 sacks, 2 sacks and a high tackle for, or a tackle for a loss. Like, I literally think he's going to be a top 5 defensive lineman in fantasy, and I would not be surprised if he was number 1 overall. Just because how bad the Browns have been. Who do you got for your IDP play at defensive lineman, JT?
Yeah, so for me this week, I've got to play, and I'm going the opposite of you. Excuse me. I'm going the opposite. Instead of going like a super high end guy, I'm looking if you're struggling. Like say you skip DNs, you kind of want other positions. You kind of waited a while, and you're like, man, I need a guy that's going to get me a sack this week. I need a guy that maybe hasn't been great all year, but is going to give me an opportunity. And that's Matt Judon for the Falcons against the Giants. He struggled a bit this year. He's not been the player, that we saw necessarily in New England coming over to Atlanta. The thing is, he's playing a small snap share. So that's why I'm warning you. I'm giving you this with a little bit of an asterisk there. He's got a small snap share. He does lead the Falcons edge rushers in snap share. But last week he played just 57% of snaps. Like they're pretty much playing him on rushing downs, and that's about it. The difference is great matchup this week against the New York Giants. And now you got Michael Penix. You have a rejuvenated team. They're only 1 game out of the playoffs right now in their division. They're only 1 game behind the Bucs. This is a must-win game at home against the Giants. You got the rookie QB. You're going to have a fired-up crowd. You're going to have a fired-up team. I think this is a spot where Matt Judon comes through and has a big game for you. I think he gets you at least a sack and maybe more. But this is just a good matchup. All the numbers. This is one of those ones, every once in a while we talk about it, Jorge, on the show. We love to go with the numbers. We love to give you like, hey, here's the guys playing well. Here's here's that because of these reasons. Sometimes you got to go with the gut a little bit in fantasy. You got to go with the gut a little bit. I feel like this is a gut call. He only had 1 tackle last week. So you saw, it can be bad. Just 1 solo tackle against Vegas. But he did have a sack against Minnesota and a sack against Denver. So he's missed some games. He's missed some time. But when he's played, he's gotten some sacks here of late. For some reason, if you're looking for a guy and you're like, scraping, obviously don't start him over some of these other real high-end guys. But if you're looking through your lineup, you're like, man, I need somebody that can maybe get me a big sack in a high-scoring sack league where maybe you get 4, 5, 6 points for a sack. Judon, I think, is a guy you could possibly look at squeezing in your lineup this week.
I mean, you asked a lot of people. You asked Nate Markham how big of a fan I was of Matt Judon. He'll say there's no word to describe how big of a fan. Like his time in New England was beyond elite. It was the elite of the elite. And he was always so underrated. Gets traded to Atlanta, and it just has not been paying dividends for this edge rushing situation for the Falcons. But again, gotta love the matchup. And what were we talking about last week? JT, do you start your studs or you play the matchup? And it's one of those things where it's like there's an argument for both sides. Like, you don't want to get too cute and screw yourself out of a high performance where you have an elite option on your bench going off and you don't have that on your active roster. But at the same time, maybe you're weak at defensive linemen and you're like still like cycling through these guys playing them based off of matchup. And if that's you and you have Matt Judon on your roster, like start him. This matchup is just too damn good to pass up. Go all in this situation. 100% coasting there.
And see, I've got him in a couple teams where I've loved Judon. I keep trying to figure out how to get him in the lineup this year, but I've had other guys that are just slightly better than him. I've got some Benitos. I got some people I'm playing over him, but he's a guy I'm really looking at this week. I have a league with TJ. If TJ ends up having, the ankle looks like it's going to be an issue, there's a chance I might slide a Judon in for him. You might be in a situation like that where you're looking at a guy, you're like, hey, is he going to play 50%? How much is he going to play? Is he going to be healthy? Judon, if he's sitting there on your bench and you've kind of been letting him sit there all year, it might be the week. It might be the week to break him out.
Yep, 100% agree. Let's get into some fades here. And originally I was going to have like just one player listed, but I'm going to say that it's basically all the edge rushers for the New Orleans Saints. And let's not get cute here. Last week versus the Commanders, Cameron Jordan came out of the ground where he was 6 feet under in terms of IDP performances, not as a real person or as a real football player, because he can kick my ass. But for IDP Fantasy Football, he had 2 sacks. The former Commander got his revenge on his old team. Chase Young got 2 sacks. And my fade this week, Carl Granderson, who still I feel is one of the most underrated edge rushers. He is my fade this week. The Packers are allowing the second fewest sacks on the season. Tackles Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom over the past month have only allowed 1 sack to Jordan Love. And believe it or not, I spoke about him just a few seconds ago. Chase Young since week 12 has actually been leading the team in pressures. So and his pressures and sacks for the New Orleans Saints, But that being the case, not against Green Bay, not against this week. This offensive line is just these tackles for the Green Bay Packers are no joke. And whether you're somebody who is like me and is a truther for Carl Granderson or has been monitoring how the Saints have been doing with Chase Young, none of them is worth a start this week. Don't let recency bias of last week's performance, like, oh, well, they got to Jaden Daniels and he can scramble. And the fact that they got, 5 sacks on him last week is a point that they can get to anybody, not against Jordan Love this week. So this is where you don't get cute. And hope for, repeat performances here. So fading Carl Granderson, as well as all the other Saints edge rushers this week. JT, who's your faded DL?
So I told you guys this was my play because originally this was my play against the Giants. That's why I like Judon going against the Giants this week. Well, my play last week was Adave Owe for the Ravens going against the Giants. A great opportunity for him to get home. Blanked. Absolutely blanked. Just killed me. It was the one that just killed me. Now he's going up against the Steelers. The Steelers want to run the ball. I know this has just been a historic, just 2 boxers just going at each other, just punching, low scoring game. I don't see a ton of passes in this game for Russ. And I haven't, even though Owe's having a nice year with 8 sacks, he's been pretty good. I don't like him this week. The interior of the Steelers line has been really solid. Where you beat the Steelers is you beat their tackles. You got to get outside. You got to beat Broderick Jones, who's actually been much improved the last few weeks. But that's where you're going to get to the Steelers is taking those guys. They're just strong up the middle. Owe inside. He plays on that outside, but he's not a guy that's known for like just complete speed around the corner. And I think that's how you beat the Steelers on the O-line. I just don't like it this week. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. I think they want to keep this game ugly and low scoring and a field goal affair. I just don't see Russ pumping a ton of deep balls downfield where he's holding in deep drops and giving guys a chance to get to him. So I'm out on Owe this week. I think it's going to be an absolute battle It's going to be a great game as it always is between the Steelers and the Ravens, but I do not like him to get a sack this week. And his tackle for is just, it's almost nothing. It's like you need a sack out of him. I mean, he just has given you so little this year as far as tackles from week to week. I was just pulling up, yeah. I mean, he has on the year 20 solo tackles. I mean, he has one game this year. And again, and I will say this as I trash him. He had 2.5 sacks. So somebody's gonna jump in like, didn't he have 2.5 sacks against the Steelers earlier this year? Yes, but that's why I think the Steelers are gonna be much more aware of it. That was his best game he had all year against the Steelers. I don't see Mike Tomlin and the Steelers letting that happen again. I just don't see him repeating that 5 tackle, 2.5 sack performance that he had against the Steelers. And that was by far his best game of the year. I just don't think the Steelers let that happen again.
100% cosign. So just to round out our plays and fades at defensive lineman, really expect a big game from Trey Hendrickson. And then Matt Judon has a great matchup versus the Giants. Fade Carl Granderson as well as any other Saints edge rushers. Don't let recency bias get to you. And Odafe Owe, who has basically no tackle floor whatsoever. Don't trust him this week. Let's get to linebackers. My linebacker play, we mentioned him a little bit earlier. I used to call him back in the day when he joined the New Orleans Saints, Mr. #tackle machine, one of my original favorite IDP linebackers. I'm riding the train with Demario Davis, linebacker New Orleans Saints. Over the past month, he's been the LB 11 in points per game using Fantasy Pro scoring, coming off of a 14 tackle, 1 sack game against the Commanders the week before, 8 total tackles and an interception versus the Giants. Fun fact, the Saints defenders on the season, meaning the entire defense, have the second most solo tackles produced in any other team in the NFL. So, yay for IDP purposes. Yeah, give me all the solo tackles. Compared to Pete Werner, Davis is the far more efficient tackler. And let's face it, the name of the game for the Green Bay Packers is run the ball with Josh Jacobs. That's last I heard, for an inside linebacker, that's pretty cool. That's what you want to hear. For IDP managers, you want to get the linebacker who's going to be stopping the running back. So give me all of Demario Davis this week. Mr. #tackle machine is going to help you get to your championship games next week. So all about Demario Davis.
Love that one. Yeah, you don't like the D line. They're not going to get a lot of pressure, but you love those guys getting tackles. I feel like the Saints are a little like the Colts. They're like the NFC version of the Colts. Like they get all these guys that just get a million tackles, right? All the DBs are getting tackles, all the linebackers are getting tackles, and they just don't get a lot. They're not getting a ton of stuff up front, but I like that a lot. The old man, Demario Davis, he's going to come through and win some people some championships down the stretch here. I have a feeling.
I hope he does, because I'm one of his managers. So, who's your play for a linebacker, JT?
So my play, we brought up a little bit in Money Mirage, talked about Michael McFadden for the Giants. No Bobby Okereke. 11 tackles and a sack last week against the Ravens for McFadden. Just a really nice game. Week 14, the week before against the Saints, another 11 tackles. He has 11 tackles in 4 of the last 6 games for the Giants. He has really been super solid on that defense, especially with the injuries kind of happening with everybody. Newman out now. It's just Okereke out. It's been, they're losing guys left and right. Giants have to have somebody. He has been the one guy making stops, and now they get the Falcons. Falcons are going to run the ball. They're going to pass the ball. They're going to try to protect. They want to get Penix out there throwing the ball around, but they want to protect him some. I think you're going to see a lot of Tyler Algier. I think you're going to see a lot of Bijan Robinson. I think he's the guy. I think I'm interested to see what the line is. I haven't looked on his tackle numbers line for betting purposes, but I would be shocked if it's not over 8.5, if not a little higher, and even probably 8.5 at like -140. Like, I think he's going to have a big game tackle wise. So I'm on McFadden this week. I think he's just going to end up with a ton of tackles in a game that I think the Falcons are going to be revved up and ready to go.
Will's in the chat saying Micah McFadden or Dane Belton, who's going to get more tackles this week?
I'm on McFadden now. I think it's McFadden. Belton had a nice week last week. He lucked in that it was like no one else was there to make stops, so he was the last line of defense. He was like the last guy making the tackles. So I hate to see Tyler Nubin out because he was playing so well, and I'm a big Nubin fan, so I hate to see him out. I think McFadden's the guy. Though I do, Belton had just a monster week last week for the Giants, but I like McFadden. I like McFadden a lot this week.
Very nice. All right, let me get to my linebacker fade of the week. He's been playing pretty well. He's been, over the past month, the LB9 in Fantasy Pro scoring. But TJ Edwards, Chicago Bears, not really a great matchup versus the Detroit Lions this week. No David Montgomery running it up the middle because he's out for the year, which that sucks for Montgomery managers. And just Montgomery in general. Like I feel like I'm just like a fan of David Montgomery, been since he's been in Chicago and then signed with
Monty, man. I'm a Monty guy.
Yeah, he's just such a great, just such a underrated running back.
Mm-hmm.
But you know who that leaves? That leaves a dual threat running back in Jahmyr Gibbs, who I believe the passing game is going to start coming back in full force here for the Detroit Lions, and you're going to see Gibbs, utilized more as a receiving back in this situation in this game versus the Bears, which means you're taking TJ Edwards out of the play. The chances of this being a good run stopping opportunity for TJ Edwards is kind of in doubt. And you go back to the last time these two teams played, Edwards was only able to tally 6 total tackles for 9 fantasy points using IDP scoring, Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. So, again, yes, he's been playing really well the past month. LB9 fantasy points per game. I get it. But no David Montgomery and an elusive Jahmyr Gibbs and a passing game that's going to get a little bit, more emphasis for Detroit. It means no bueno things for TJ Edwards.
Yeah, that's a toughie. I saw that Will just popped up here and said, I heard Montgomery regular season over rushing prop was 775.5 yards, ended at 775. I was not on that bet this year, but I did see that. So I can't totally verify. That's what I read as well. That's a toughie. It always hurts when you take those over season-long bets and you miss it strictly because of injury. I remember a couple years ago I had CMC over 12 touchdowns for the year. I thought I was like, this is an absolute slam bet. He ended up missing like almost that whole year. I think he played like 4 or 5 games. He ended up with, I think it was 10 or 11 touchdowns in like the 4 games he played. I was like, he still almost covered it. And the injuries kill you on those season-long bets.
Yeah, no, it's. I was really bummed out when I saw that news this week.
Yeah, I like Monty a lot. He's one of my favorite guys. I actually traded away in 2 leagues last week before the injury, and I hated giving him up. Made me feel slightly better by giving up, but I'm like, still hate to see guys hurt, and I do have them in other leagues, so that one was a toughie down the stretch.
I hear that. Speaking of, not speaking of things you like, let's talk about something you don't like or someone you don't like this week at the linebacker position.
Yeah, so this is a guy who's been in and out all year. He's played well at times, but it's not looking great right now, and that is Nate Landman for the Falcons. It's Ellis's job. It's clear-cut he's the LB1 there. So Troy Anderson got put on IR, and it looked like, okay, they've been splitting time. So it's been Anderson, Landman. If one of them's hurt, the other guy's getting a ton of time. If the other guy's hurt, the other guy's getting a ton of time. And when they're both around, they're splitting time, which pretty much makes them both impossible to play. Anderson's out again on IR. Hate to see it. I love Anderson. But now you thought, okay, if you're a Landman owner, you're like, now's my chance. I can get him back in the lineup, right? He's going to be the number 2 guy next to Ellis. Both can get good tackle numbers. And then what do we see last week with Troy Anderson out? He split time anyway. What? JD Bertrand came in and played 43% of the snaps. Landman only played 30% of the snaps. absolutely brutal. Brutal. I just don't know if you can trust him the rest of the way at all to have him in your lineups here in the playoffs. This should be a good matchup versus the Giants, but if he's getting that kind of snap share, I just don't. And the thing is, when he's played, he's been good. He had 8 or more tackles in the past 3 games leading up to last week, where he only got a 30% snap share, and he had 3 tackles against the Raiders, just 1 solo stop. I thought it was time for me to get Landman back in my lineups. I was fired up about him. I had him like, clicking him, putting him in the starting lineup. I saw those stats this week. I saw he had a bad week last week. I was like, oh, did something happen? Did he get hurt? No. Bertrand just stole a bunch of his snaps, and now I'm like frustrated as can be. So if you're a Landman owner and you're like, hey, this is the time to get him back in when you saw the Troy Anderson news, stop, wait, don't do it. Got to get somebody else in there. If he's only going to get a 30% snap share and that's not injury related, you can't trust that guy in the playoffs. Just can't do it, which sucks because he's been really good when he's got the snap share this year.
Love it. Will's in the chat asking, McFadden or Cashman? I still am rolling with McFadden. Cashman, the Vikings really good against the run. But you know who knows that? The Seahawks offensive coordinator. And they also know that the Vikings aren't that great against wide receivers, which is why I anticipate Seattle hucking and chucking it on the Minnesota Vikings. Now, that's with Geno starting. And I think Geno got in a full practice today, if memory serves me correctly. So he's trending in that right direction. For some reason, he doesn't play, and it's Sam Howell. Then I think the gap closes here. But I'm with you, JT, on the narrative that, Michael Penix is going to be his first game. They're not going to want to overload him too soon. They want to lean on the running game, which is great for the Giants here and Micah McFadden. So do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm also worried that Seahawks have some injuries at running back. Like now I just saw today, Kenneth Walker again did not practice. Charbonnet also did not practice. Now it could just be resting him, but they said he has an oblique injury. If they end up getting down to the 3rd string running back, you think this team going against the Vikings is just going to start trying to pound the run with a 3rd string or 4th string running back? They're going to have to throw the ball. To me, I would play McFadden over Cashman this week. I don't know what's going to happen with the Seahawks. And if both those running backs are out, I cannot see them doing more than just a handoff here and there. I don't think they just turn around. And I don't even know if is it Kenny McIntosh is their 3rd stringer, or is it somebody else?
I'm actually
so it's like
a few dynasty leagues. I'm kind of excited for that opportunity.
I have Kenny McIntosh in a couple of dynasty leagues too, but I don't. Even if he ends up being the guy, I don't know. Especially going against this Vikings high-powered offense, that they just turn around and start running the ball the whole time. I just don't know if I see it. I lean McFadden. I think he has a higher upside this week.
100%. Let's get to defensive backs here. Plays and fades. I'll go first. Very, very simple analysis here. The results speak for themselves. Last time Jeremy Chinn and the Commanders faced the Philadelphia Eagles, Chinn posted 12 tackles for 15.8 fantasy points. Philadelphia versus defensive backs have allowed the 6th most solo tackles to defensive backs on the season. You're already giving him a high floor. The linebacking situation, is Luvu going to play off ball? Is he going to rush? You don't know. We saw in the last matchup versus the Eagles, Luvu was used more as a pass rusher, so that's where Chinn came down into the box and helped out Bobby Wagner. I anticipate that same thing happening again. The reason why the Commanders didn't win versus the Philadelphia Eagles was not because their defense wasn't good enough. It's because their offense couldn't do jack. So I expect the same type of alignment here for Jeremy Chinn, really crushing those box snap percentages more so than in recent memory. So give me Jeremy Chinn this week as a bona fide must-start defensive back play for you in IDP. JT, who is your IDP play at DB?
So I was between 2 guys last week in one of my leagues, and I was debating, and my fandom took over, and I started the wrong guy. My bad. My bad. I played Jordan Poyer for the Dolphins instead of Brandon Jones for the Broncos. I knew Brandon Jones was going to have a good game. I was wishfully hoping he would not against my Colts because I need my Colts to win to make the playoffs. Screwed that one up bad. Luckily, I still won and moved on to the playoffs, but it could have buried me as I got 2 points out of Jordan Poyer and 29 points out of Brandon Jones on my bench. Monster game for Brandon Jones for the Broncos. 9 tackles, 3 pass breakups, a pick. Monster game against the Colts. I'm playing him this week against the Chargers. He's been on a tear lately. He's been looked really good. He's got 2 picks in the last 3 weeks. Last time he played the Chargers, 12 tackles and a pass breakup, 11 solo stops. 11. I'm all over Brandon Jones against the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. So get him in your lineups, play him early, hopefully get that big early lead, make whoever you're playing nervous that Brandon Jones puts up a big game for you. The running game, we've seen it with the Chargers. They're going more pass heavy with the injuries at running back. I think this means Brandon Jones is going to be in the mix all day long. Like I said, he's looked really good coming off a great game. He had an absolutely fantastic game, probably outside of his interception games. That's his best game of the year was against the Chargers. I think he has another good one. I'm not making the same mistake 2 weeks in a row. Brandon Jones, you are in my lineup.
Nice. You know who's not in my lineup? Who had a really good season, then had a few up and down weeks. But then 2 weeks ago was okay. Trayvon Moehrig, defensive back, Las Vegas Raiders. Got to sit you, man. The Jacksonville Jaguars allowed the fewest solo tackles of DBs on the season. And last week we saw this is the concerning part here for Moehrig. We saw Moehrig play 37% of his snaps were in the slot, which obviously you're playing a higher percentage of the slot than you are in the box. That's not great. And believe it or not, the Raiders aren't worried about the Jaguars running game. They're worried about, and again, I'm just in stitches saying this aloud. The Jaguars' strength is the passing game with Mac Jones.
Mac, baby.
Laughing. It's Mac Jones, and then it's the passing game for the Jacksonville Jaguars that's going to be taking over here. The running game, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne, just no. That's not going to be the point of emphasis. So Moehrig being that de facto linebacker is not going to be helpful. So just the 37% of the snaps in the slot, just I mean, you want to see slot percentages, but not that high. 37% is very excessive. So fading Trayvon Moehrig this week.
Yeah, he's been a rough one for us. I know we've gotten a million questions about him the last couple of weeks, as it feels like he either hits or completely busts week to week. He's been a tough one. So I absolutely am the same boat with you on that one. We've had him a couple plays and we've had him fades a couple weeks in a row. My fade this week is CJ Gardner-Johnson for the Eagles. He just hasn't been great this year. He's one of those guys, last 5 games, he's given you almost nothing. Really low tackles. He just hasn't been great. He had 3 tackles, 1 pass breakup last time they faced the Commanders. Another guy I was actually looking at putting here as well was their other safety, and why am I just absolutely blanking right now? I can't even believe that I'm blanking. Give me 2 seconds. Blankenship. That's why I'm blanking. I'm blanking on Blankenship. So Blankenship was another guy who's been a little down lately, and so I wasn't big on him either. He was one of those guys I was also going to fade. The only problem about him is he actually played pretty well the last time they played the Commanders. He had 10 tackles, a pass defense, and a pick. That was his best game of the season. So I was going to fade him because he's not been good lately. We have not seen much out of him the last couple of weeks. He's basically getting you about 3 tackles a game, and that's it. So he struggled a bit, but he did have a really nice outing against them. So if you happen to have both the guys, I'm probably playing Blankenship over Gardner-Johnson, but I don't like either of the safeties for the Eagles this week.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for defensive backs, our plays and fades. Jeremy Chen and Brandon Jones for plays, Trayvon Morig and CJ Gardner-Johnson for our fades. Well, there's only one thing left to do here before we close out the show, which we are, again, hour and a half. I feel like that's the norm now for Shoot the Gap. So let's round this out. Let's have some sack lunch, shall we? You know the drill here, folks. We're going to give you a defensive player that we believe is going to get you at least one sack this week. But JT, before the show, was like, I'm going to do things a little bit atypically than we normally do. Normally we go defensive lineman or edge rusher. Not this week, JT. Who are you going with?
Couldn't help myself. I was looking at some different things. We try to make sure we don't go with a guy that we've already used earlier this year. So I started racking my brain. I'm like, who haven't I already said is going to get a sack? And I was like, you know what? I'm getting crazy. I'm going to take an off-ball linebacker to get a sack this week. This is like me doubling down. This is like throwing out the Hail Mary, like taking the big dog bet. I love it. I'm taking my guy, Mizzou alum, Nick Bolton of the Chiefs. He's got 3 sacks in the last 6 games. They've been blitzing him more. The Texans have really, really struggled to protect CJ Stroud. I think we're going to see the Chiefs bring the heat on him all day long, especially if Mahomes is limited, if he doesn't play, or if that ankle's really bothering him. I think you're going to see him play more aggressive on defense, try to get stops, try to shorten the field, try to get takeaways. I think they're going to bring Bolton, who's had a little bit of a rough season as far as like where you probably drafted him or how much you spent on him. He's not had, that top 10 LB year you wanted out of him, but he's starting to come on a little bit lately. He's starting to get some splash plays. He's getting some sacks. He's getting some interceptions. He's getting some fumble recoveries. So I'm liking where he's headed this year right now. I like this matchup. I think they're going to bring him. He right now for off-ball linebackers, he's 11th in the league. He has 22 pressures this year. So 22 pressures for an off-ball linebacker. He's, according to PFF, he's 9th in pass rush snaps with 88 on the year. So he's one of those guys, like, even though he's playing that off-ball inside linebacker, they are using him in different ways. He is rushing the passer. He is bringing some heat. He is putting pressure on the quarterback with those 22 pressures and 3 sacks this year. 3 sacks, I said, in the last couple weeks. 3 sacks in the last 6 games. I think he technically has 4 on the season. I'm liking Bolton. I know this is a crazy call. Karfalitis would be the easy guy. Be like, take the DN. He's going to get one. I'm like, I think Nick Bolton's going to get one, man. So that's my crazy call for the week is Nick Bolton, sack lunch, getting one against the Texans.
So I'm torn between my fandom and a super obvious play that I have not used yet this season. Last week I told you Zach Seiler was going to have a sack against the interior of the Houston Texans defense, and he did, because I told you that
dominated.
The interior lineman for the Houston Texans just gave up way too many pressures. And I could tell you that Chris Jones is going to dominate for Kansas City and get you a sack, at least a sack, against the Houston Texans this week. But I'm not going to. And I might regret it. But my homerism is kicking in. And like I told you in IDP Plays and Fades, Jeremy Chen is going to be closing to the line of scrimmage more, because Frankie Louvu is going to be rushing the passer, and I think Frankie Louvu gets you close to a repeat of what you saw the last time they played the Philadelphia Eagles with 2 sacks. Maybe not get 2, but he's definitely going to get you 1. Again, this is going to be a tough defensive matchup for most of the game. Give me Frankie Louvu as my sack lunch pick here.
I love it. 2 off-ball linebackers is going to say. I took Chris Jones early in the year, so that's why he was off my list. But I also, that's part of the reason I like Bolton. I think they're going to be so worried about Chris Jones just wreaking havoc. Right. I think you're going to see a late blitz from Bolton coming right up the middle while Chris Jones is getting double teamed and running through guys, and Bolton's just going to come untouched and light up CJ Stroud. So I'm in on that one, but I like where your head's on that. I like that. I'd love us get a little crazy here in the week, end of the year playoffs. Let's get some off-ball linebacker sacks. Let's do it.
Next thing you do, we're next week for week 16 or 17.
We're going DB sacks. We're going to be who's your DB if they can get a sack. That's what we're going to do.
Let's lay down the gauntlet. Cornerback sats. Not even just to be the cornerback sats, blitzing cornerbacks.
Cornerback blitzing. I'm gonna have to go do some research. Who's bringing heat from the outside? That's what I'm gonna have to see.
Nice. All right, before we get out of here, JT, anything you want to plug? Hockey, betting, IDP, you name it. What you got?
Yeah, things are a little crazy next week with the holidays. I think I will post something, but I think we're going to run the hockey show around the ice here on Fantasy and Frames on Monday instead of Tuesday, with Tuesday being Christmas Eve. We're going to probably run the hockey show on Monday. And then if after this weekend's college bet, if you haven't looked yet, go back and watch our college betting show, The Stew with JT Brew. Me and Benny D broke down the college football playoffs games this weekend. We'll be breaking down the second round matchups next week. That one is probably going to be on Thursday night instead of Tuesday. So look for us Thursday night after the Bears-Seahawks game for the Stew with JT Brew here on Fantasy Frames. We'll be running that one next Thursday. So just a little bit change up for the holiday, the week of the holidays, though. And then IDP plays and fades. Hopefully we have it out tomorrow. Crossing my fingers. But if for some reason it doesn't come out tomorrow, I'll be out Friday for sure.
There you go. And of course, you can catch me on Sunday on the Fantasy and Frames Fantasy Football Kickoff Show. We start at 9. We go till you all stop asking questions, and you all ask a lot of questions. So we're probably going to be on for quite a while, which we love. We love giving you
I was at a gymnastics week meet last week, and I jumped in and threw a couple start-sit questions to you guys at the end. I'm sitting at the gymnastics meet with my earpiece in, and listening to the show as I'm watching the gymnastics meet. I'm like, telling my girl, I'm like, just tap me when she's up. Tap me when she's up, and I'll pause and I'll look up.
Nice.
But that's how you know she's good. She's like, okay, you don't have to pay attention to everybody else. You've seen all these other people go 100 times. So nice of my girlfriend to let me watch the show, bring the earpiece, watch it on the and listen on the phone. So
that's awesome.
You can do that as well, people. You can.
Yes, you can. You know, you got to keep her, you know, when that happens. Yeah, no, folks. So yeah, look out for that. Look out for Drew Scott's plays and fades on offense and defense special teams. Friday, we got, as we do every Friday, the Daily Fix with Keith Fleming and Kevin Tompkins this week. We got Keith's DraftKings DFS playbook coming out, where he gives you plays for both cash and multi entry lineups, just going over all of his favorite plays there. And then of course Colby Conway, he has his Fantasy Football Laboratory article where he does a lot of deep diving into research and telling you why players are going to find success or whether they're not. And he's talking about some high profile names that you will be starting this week that you should probably be paying attention to. All of this, plus our rankings, you can find over at fantasyandframes.com. We'll be posting this on all of our social media channels, whether it's X, Facebook. We even post it now on Blue Sky. I mean, wherever the masses go and consume content, Fantasy and Frames is there. And of course, if you were watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. If you're listening on podcast, rate, review, let us know what you think. And to everybody who stayed up with us till what time is it here on the East Coast? 7 minutes to 12 again. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you all. Really appreciate your support here on Shoot the Gap. So for JT, I'm Jorge. Good luck this week. Next time we see each other, we're talking about championships.
Championships.
Take care.